Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Eye. 4 episodes into the Veiled Orders, and the architecture is unmistakable. We stood at the tomb and inside the lodge. We traced the rituals, the symbols, and the 20th century handoff that fused Skull and Bones, high-degree Freemasonry, the CFR, and the intelligence foundations into the apex of the cartel. Last episode, we watched that same machinery upload itself into the digital veil, Silicon Valley boardrooms, private equity empires, and programmable finance. Today, we name the living bloodlines and the current initiates who still sit at the exact intersection of tech, finance, intelligence, and politics in 2026. Not conspiracy theater, documented networks, generational taps, and quiet handshakes that explain why certain names remain untouchable no matter how many files surface. This is episode 5, The Living Bloodlines. The Bush lineage remains the clearest through line from the tomb to the present. Prescott Bush, Bones 1917, seeded the family into the intelligence and finance. George H.W. Bush, Bones 1948, ran the CIA and the White House. George W. Bush, Bones 1968, occupied the Oval Office after another Bones-heavy administration. In 2026, the extended network is quieter but no less embedded. Younger cousins and tapped associates still appear on defense contractor boards, private equity desks, and foreign policy advisory groups. The Bones file system, those legendary Bones dossiers of compromising material, has never been public, yet the pattern of protection holds. Scandals that should end dynasties simply fade into selective leaks and foundation-funded rehabilitation. The Rockefeller bloodline operates on a parallel track, rooted in the broader Masonic-influenced foundations we mapped earlier. David Rockefeller's direct descendants and trustees still guide the family's vast philanthropic and investment arms. The Rockefeller Foundation and its spin-offs continue to fund global health, climate, and digital ID initiatives that align perfectly with the Apex agenda. Their CFR and trilateral commission seats have been occupied by family-adjacent figures for decades. In 2026, you will still find Rockefeller-linked capital flowing into the very AI and biotech firms that feed the Silicon Vale, quietly shaping policy through grants rather than public office. Other Skull and Bones families maintain their grip through finance and media. The Harriman, Taft, and Stimson lines have evolved into modern private equity and hedge fund power. Look at the leadership firms like Blackstone, KKR, and select desks at Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan. Multiple Bones-initiated alumni or their direct protégés sit on boards or in senior strategy roles. These are not random hires. The TAP system that began in 1832 still selects for loyalty, discretion, and access. When a black budget contractor needs new funding or a tech merger needs quiet regulatory approval, the network moves without leaving fingerprints. On the Masonic side, the lattice is wider and deeper. High-degree initiates, especially 32nd and 33rd Scottish Rite, continue to dominate key nodes in the judiciary, military intelligence, and state-level politics. In 2026, you will find them in federal appeals courts, Pentagon advisory panels, and the upper ranks of agencies that interface with Five Eyes. The mutual aid oaths ensure that investigations into elite networks stall at precisely the right moment. The same fraternal infrastructure that protected Dulles-era assets now quietly shields modern compromat cases, Epstein, adjacent names, offshore ledger accounts, and Silicon Valley scandals that never quite reach a courtroom. The new frontier is the tech finance intelligence fusion. Current and recent Bones taps have cycled through Stanford, Harvard, and Yale into venture capital and AI. Several sit on the boards or advisory councils of firms seeded by In-Q-Tel or partnered with Palantir. CFR members with documented Masonic or Bones adjacency advise the NSA and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Reid Hoffman-style networkers and Peter Thiel, adjacent circles may not all carry the 322 pin, yet they operate inside the same closed salons where the old orders still set the guest list. The revolving door spins faster than ever. CIA alumni land at Google or Meta. Former Fed governors with CFR pedigrees advise crypto exchanges that the cartel has already colonized. This is why accountability remains selective in 2026. When new Epstein-adjacent files drop, when black budget audits are demanded, when a whistleblower surfaces with fresh compromat, the bloodlines activate. A quiet call between a bonesman at a hedge fund and a 33rd degree contact at a major law firm. A foundation grant that buys silence. An algorithmic burial across the platforms the cartel still influences. The living bloodlines do not need to issue orders. They simply maintain the same ancient structure: lifelong loyalty, shared secrets, and generational placement at every choke point. Again, we are not claiming every descendant or every current initiate is personally orchestrating events. Most are simply born or tapped into a machine that rewards discretion and punishes exposure. But the machine itself, the selection, the protection, the continuity, remains unchanged from 1832. The tomb is still on High Street. The lodge is still on the square. The bloodlines and the handshakes are still the human infrastructure that lets the intel cartel survive every scandal. In episode 6, we will descend into the esoteric core, the symbols and rituals still performed in private in 2026, the deeper philosophical teachings that higher initiates receive, and how those hidden doctrines shape the policies pushed from Davos to the Fed to the next wave of digital control. Until then, watch the resumes that keep appearing in the same positions. Notice the quiet settlements. Notice the foundations that never lose influence. The bloodlines are not relics. They are the living veins of the veil. This has been The Eye, episode 5 of the Veiled Orders, with your host, The Eye. If the living names and networks just came into sharper focus, share it. The only thing these bloodlines cannot survive is a public that finally sees the veins behind the machine. We'll see you in the inner circle. This has been The Eye. God bless you, and God bless America.